A development project or a power play? Somalia says it wants to build 45 kilometers of roads in Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland, a territory that has governed itself for more than 3 decades, but which Mogadishu still claims as its own. Somaliland wants the investment, funded through a wider World Bank program, but by presenting the project as a federal initiative, Somalia is reinforcing its claim over Somaliland and challenging its push for independence. The dispute now carries greater international weight after Israel became the first UN member state to recognize Somaliland as an independent country. Joining us now is Saeed Ibrahim, the editor of Somaliland Chronicle. Thank you for joining us. Is this a positive story of potential cooperation, or is Somalia using international development funding to strengthen its sovereignty claim over Somaliland?
It's actually the latter. And again, you've actually put this in a way that, makes, like incredibly fair in how you framed it. It's nothing more than a power play for Somalia to try and blur the line that is, between Somaliland and Somalia, and at least, kind of show the world that it's actually doing, XYZ in a territory it does not control. And that's, basically the facts on the ground. But it gets a little bit worse because, again, obviously, this is not a funding that's coming from Somalia itself. Somalia can't afford anything, up to and including its own security of its capital. I think that's pretty obvious, right? But, this is coming from the World Bank, and World Bank, by extension, does not recognize Somaliland. So, again, the framing is wrong in how the federal government is trying to present this as a project that it's doing in Somaliland, which is absolutely nonsense. But at the same time, the fault really lies with Somaliland, for actually accepting it. Because like you said, the stakes are much higher. It is a recognized country. And, again, accepting these projects kind of, tie it, a little bit more to Somalia than extricate it and kind of going in the right direction. So we think this is actually a not a positive step. Somaliland can afford these projects. 20-some million. Somaliland's budget this year is close to $400 million. That's not a lifeline. It's a reading error that Somaliland can actually afford to fund itself.
But Somaliland has said that it wants the investment for the project, but can it move forward without direct cooperation between Mogadishu and Somaliland's authorities? Is there another way to frame this so that they can still get the investment through the World Bank? What are the options here?
So there's a couple options. There's an arrangement, and again, these mistakes are compounding, right? Like I said, this is really not the only project that's ongoing at the moment in Somaliland. There's, quite a number of them. There's one with the, central bank and the World Bank, and again, in a larger context of a project that's being funded, for what the World Bank terms as Somalia, and it treats Somaliland as part of that, right? So, again, Somaliland really needs to, kind of think hard. And again, this is, like when the president speaks to the world and he says, we want investment, not aid. This is aid. It's not investment. So, it's hard to really justify, saying I'm a separate country, yet I'm getting this, trying to, kind of play sort of a word, jujitsu. It doesn't work. And again, it hands Somalia a win it doesn't deserve.
Now, what about the World Bank and its role in all of this? Could it risk appearing to support Somalia's territorial claim, even if the project is intended or presented purely as development aid, if it does go through?
Now, again, the World Bank does support, Somalia and its territorial integrity, if that means anything to anybody these days. But, the World Bank is, obviously does not recognize Somaliland. And the only way funds like these can actually land in Somaliland is if it accepts it and it gets treated like a federal member state. Right? Now, sort of like wording differences, when you really, look into these documents, But again, this money is being given to Somalia with, again, the tiniest amounts earmarked for Somaliland. We're not even talking about 50-50. We're talking about a percent that's not even 5% of the total project at times. So again, when you compare this to Somaliland's national budget, which is, 420 plus million, for 2026, I believe it can actually afford to fund a $20 million road, right? And anybody to say otherwise, either doesn't know math or I think there's an addiction to aid, and, it's time to behave like, we should encourage more investment.
Interesting. We'll have to see if and how this project does move forward. Saeed Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us.